This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and partially disassembled today we have a Birch 78 RPM record player, probably from the late 30s or early 40s if I had to make a wild guess. I can't find any date codes anywhere. I got this cheap off of the auction site. It seems these 78 players don't get a lot of attention for obvious reasons because they don't play 33s and 45s. And even at the cheap price I got it for, I was kind of hesitant about bidding on it because it uses this heavy tone arm with a heavy crystal cartridge in it. And these arms, it's hard to modify them to use any modern cartridge, so you're pretty much stuck with having the old cartridge rebuilt. I mean, they can be modified, but it's a real pain in the butt. And when you're talking $60 to have the cartridge rebuilt, that can be a little intimidating. Well, I got it in here, and I said, what the heck, I'm going to plug this in and see what happens. The needle was missing out of it, so I stuck an old steel Victrola needle in it, threw a record on it, and the darn thing played. And it sounded really well, so I opened it up and discovered someone had recapped the amplifier, and when I looked at the cartridge, I could tell that somebody had the cartridge apart, so they likely sent it in and had it rebuilt, which that was a nice plus. Looking at the drive mechanism, it looks nice and clean, and this turns nice and smooth, so I have an idea somebody took all this apart and has already re-lubricated it. I can see where they replaced the tire on the idler wheel with a rubber O-ring, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine for this. In fact, they make an O-ring kit to replace the idler wheels on the RCA 45 changers, so I'm okay with that. But one thing they didn't do is, and I don't know why they didn't do it, they didn't replace the old power cord. And look at here, that's not very safe. So before we put this thing into service, we're going to have to replace the power cord. The only thing I can think of is maybe this wasn't cracked like this when they did the rest of the work to this, so they didn't bother with this. I don't know, but we can't have this. I don't know how well you can see it, but someone's already added a spring to the back of this tone arm, although I don't think it lightened it very much. We may have to check the tracking pressure just for entertainment once we get this all back together. Here's the underside. This has got a nice electrodynamic field coil speaker in it, and that's why I say it's from the late 30s, early 40s, because pretty much after the war ended, they'd gone to permanent magnet speakers. The amp, just a single stage Wonder, 35Z5 and 50L6, and you can see the caps have been replaced. It's not exactly how I would do it, but the connections are secure and everything looks to be okay, so I'm not gonna really worry about it. I'm just gonna put a new power cord on it and put it back together and call it a day. Okay, I checked this cathode resistor. Looks like they got a couple of 300 ohms in parallel to give us 150, but it's up to like 180. That's not horribly bad, but we know it's only going to drift up further, so and I'm out 150, so I just put a 33 and a 130 in series. It'll give us 160 roughly. That's close enough, and with these film resistors, we don't have to worry about them going up in value over time. And I think I'm going to have to desolder this stuff anyway. I might as well neaten this up a little bit. So yeah, after getting into this, they did a rather sloppy job. This capacitor, they just had the lead laying on the terminal and soldered. They didn't bother to get out any of the old wires that were going to the old filter can that was mounted right here. They just sloppily stuck everything in here. But at least they had the cartridge rebuilt. Yeah, I just really don't like this. Let's make it look neater. And you can see right here where they just left a piece of the old cap lead there, just made a mess here. This cap here is the chassis isolation cap. Technically it needs to be replaced with a AC safety capacitor, which we'll do. And when you make a solder connection, you need to make a good mechanical bond with your component lead. You just don't lay the capacitor lead gently on top of the connector and put a tiny bit of solder on it. All I had to do with this to get it off was just barely touch my soldering iron to it, and it fell off. With this one here, we have the lead inserted through, bend it around and crimped, and then soldered, so there's no way it's going anywhere. As I tear into this, one thing I find interesting is they're not using the coil as the filter choke. Instead, they have the high side of the field coil connected to the B+ side, and then the other side connected to circuit ground. So, I mean, if this speaker went bad and I had to eliminate it, I could easily put a PM speaker in here and get rid of this field coil, and that would take some strain off of the power supply, although I'm not going to do that because this speaker right now appears to be perfectly fine. Okay, doesn't this look a lot better? Now this is called a flex ohm. It's actually used as a surge current limiting resistor, since they used a high value filter capacitor here. They had whoever worked on this had 100 in there. I'm not sure it was that high. I put an 82 in there. Comes off of the cathode here of the rectifier, goes through the surge current limiting resistor. Other end connects to our first filter. It goes down through this dropping resistor here for the screen grid, and then that's where our second filter connects. Alright, here we are. Let's put it back together and see if it plays a record or smokes. Here's an old Jimmy Rogers record. It's worn slap out. Turn the plug around because I noticed a little static whenever Alright, let's find something that's not so worn. Right, let's see if this one fares better. Why was I born? Why am I living? What do I get? What am I giving? This thing gets loud. This cartridge is plenty hot. And this has a motor power switch. You can stop the motor and not kill the amplifier when you're changing records. Alright, here we go with a period correct record. Be careful, because I still don't know. This may or may not be under copyright. Who knows?
Over the prison walls I would fly, and I'd fly to the arms of my darling, and there I'd be willing to die.
Alright, we're all back together, and I was looking at the cartridge under a good light, and I found a 1941 date stamp on it, so assuming that's the original cartridge, that's likely about the time this machine was made. And of course this up here is a storage compartment where you can store a few records, which is nice. Alright, that about does it. I've done about all I can do, and this tone arm, the way it's held in place, it just sits on this rest here, and then we have this little rubber bumper up inside the lid that when it's closed, it presses down against here. And what's wrong with this camera? Hang on. Darn thing's not wanting to open all the way. So yeah, all of you have been telling me for the past 3 years that I need to get a new camera. It might be happening quicker than I'd like it to, but anyway, this bumper presses down against the tone arm to hold it on the rest during transport. So there you go. We got kind of lucky on this one. Somebody saved me a whole lot of expense by already having the cartridge rebuilt and handling the idler wheel. So yeah, this one's ready to go.